call the meeting of the Cleveland Heights University Heights Board of Education to order. Mr. Gaynor, would you call the roll?
Mr. Register.
I'm here.
Mr. Bosch. Here. Mr. Zucker.
Here.
Mr. Silverman.
Here.
Ms. Wright.
Here. It's like a family feud, so.
Okay, we're all here. You have to help me out, Scott.
Yeah.
Can you click on it? We use Board Docs, which is connected to, it's a Google's web-based situation, and you need a computer to actually be involved here, and I didn't bring my computer with me. So,
We'll do voice votes tonight. It's all good.
huh?
We'll just do voice votes tonight.
So it's actually designed to be electronic voting, but I'll vote. We'll do voice votes so that I can stay in the game.
Okay.
So we have a couple of statements from the audience. The first person we have is Derek Garan on the International Baccalaureate Program.
Good evening to the school board and to all the members of the community present. And my name is Sarah Crane. I'm a 7th grader at Heights Middle School from Monticello. And I would like to get straight to my point of being here. I'm concerned that the International Baccalaureate system we use in most of the schools in our district is actually ineffective and not good for our students. Because IB was originally designed in Switzerland in 1968, and it was an educational program for the children of diplomats. It was designed to give them a world-class education even when they were traveling around the world. And it was designed to also prepare them to enter into the employment sectors of business, banking, and international relations. But it's been 50 years since it's been founded, and since then times have changed. You now have, you know, the workforce and a lot of the jobs, you know, it's become different. It's changed. And by the time that our students enter the workforce, the kind of jobs that IB is preparing them for will be outdated. The majority of jobs in the future that our students will hold will be STEM, that is science, technology, engineering, and math. And IB is a liberal arts program. It does not adequately cover STEM. It does not cover the STEM curriculum well. And because of that, I'm concerned that it's going to put students like me, students, you know, I go to school with, people I go to school with, my friends, me, people like that, it's going to put us behind in when it comes to, you know, employment. It's going to put us behind in the job market. It's going to hinder our chances of employment. And I'm also concerned about the high cost of the program. I'm concerned about the fact that a lot of administrators and a lot of students I've talked to actually don't like it. And so because of that, I would actually like to arrange a date with the superintendent and the school board in which I can meet with them and present a compiled presentation I have on the issue. It's completed and I'm ready to present at earliest notice. So I'd just like to know a date in which I can schedule time to present said presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, we will make sure that the superintendent's office gets in touch with you and set that up. I think it probably won't be this week, but right after we get through the breaks, we'll make sure, I'll call her until she gets in touch with you. So we'll, I think I can call till December 31st, but anyway, thank you. Thank you for having the courage to come and talk to us about it. And it would be interesting from when you meet with the superintendent, can you get some notions about other students and how they feel and what they think?
Yes, of
Okay.
course.
Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Next, we have Lee Chillicott on the Coventry Peace campus.
Good evening, and thank you. I first want to thank Cal Zucker, Eric Silverman, and Ron for the wonderful service they've given this community. And at some risk, I want to particularly single out Ron. I've known Ron since 1975, when we both served on the Citizens League and were trying to help Cleveland schools. And thank goodness he came to Cleveland Heights to help our schools for the past 16 years. The level of service and commitment and passion that you've given Ron is almost unparalleled, and we thank you profusely for that. I'm here, secondly, on behalf of Coventry Peace, to advocate for the immediate transfer of the Coventry School property to the library. As the board knows, we have stakeholders in the building who are highly dependent on the timing issue. One of those tenants has to make a commitment for playwright, financial commitment for playwright rights in January of 2018 in order to establish its season that ends June 30th, 19. So we think we expressed this to the city and to you and to the libraries, and very fortunately, the library has come forward, and we have been working with the library for almost 2 months in a way that we think can support Coventry Peace Campus. And so we're asking you to support the immediate transfer of the property to the library. The library has stepped up and expressed great support and open support. You received a letter from them as to our plan for the Coventry Peace Campus. And respectfully, we ask that you commit to them to transfer the Coventry property. We know that the joint efforts of Coventry Peace Group and the Heights Libraries can produce a terrific art center, a great park, and some modest innovative housing. So we beseech you to do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and just briefly, we are doing due diligence around that request. We have not ignored it, but we're working hard on it and just don't have we can't respond to you yet, but we are working on it. Our staff is on it every day. Thank you. Okay, do we have anybody else that wants to speak to us? Okay, thank you. Glad you came in to watch our show then. Okay, this is it, just so you know. Cal, Eric, and I, this is our final board meeting, and we're happy to finish this up, and we're happy that you agreed to join us tonight. So I hope you enjoyed as much as we do. Okay, so we're ready to do awards and recognitions.
So good evening. So tonight we have the opportunity to recognize a number of Cleveland Heights University Heights staff members who are excelling in their profession. First, I would like to recognize our Tiger Team members of the month for the month of November. Our theme this year is Culture of Excellence, and in that spirit, each month we'll be recognizing employees who go above and beyond to create a culture of excellence in our district. Each honoree was nominated by a colleague, and in some cases, multiple colleagues. Each month, we have received more than 60 nominations, which are voted upon by a committee of staff members. We have several of the chosen honorees with us tonight, so when I read your name, please come forward. From Heights High School, we have Dean of Students, Josh Luton, and math teacher, Becky McDonald. They will come forward. And Becky's son, Jacob, Jake.
And he wore a tie.
And he wears tie in this moment. Yes.
Gotta get dressed.
From our Heights Middle Schools, we have from Monticello, Tony Dean, head custodian. And our school nurse, Linda Rudy. Linda. From Boulevard Elementary, have an administrative assistant, Karen Spinks. Karen? Oh, she's here. Okay. Let's give her a hand. From Canterbury Elementary, a security monitor, Roberta Warren. Where's Roberta? From Fairfax Elementary, IB Program Specialist, Leslie Garrett. Leslie's right here. From Garrity Professional Development Center, Administrative Assistant, Delta Gray. From Noble Elementary, 3rd grade teacher, Elizabeth Bruce. From Oxford, 5th grade teacher, Christy Marbury. Christy, she's right here. And from from Roxborough, IB program specialist, Melissa Garkar. The IB specialist is not here. We had a student that spoke about IB. I wonder, did they know? And from the bus depot, we have our bus driver. Is Cameron? Is Cameron? Axel here. So Cameron Axel. Thank you. So congratulations to all the honorees, and thank you for your efforts in promoting a culture of excellence in our district. And we're gonna get a picture. So. So next, we will honor our 2017 Master Teachers from Heights High School. The District Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources and Operations, Dr. Paul Lombardo is here to present the teachers and say a few words about their accomplishments. So Dr. Lombardo.
All right, good evening, everyone. That's nice. Tonight we have 4 accomplished professionals from the high school receiving recognition in mastery of teaching. The master teacher designation means that an educator demonstrates excellence inside and out of the classroom through consistent leadership and focused collaboration. I'd like to bring up Sarah Adair, who's our master teacher chair. She's a 1st grade teacher at Oxford, to tell you a little bit more about the program.
Thank you, and thank you for recognizing the high school master teachers. Tonight, we recognize the middle school and elementary school master teachers in November. So to be designated as a master teacher in the state of Ohio, eligible educators must clearly demonstrate each of the following criteria as described in the Ohio Standards for the Teaching Profession. Master teachers will achieve exemplary scores in 4 of 5 areas on the scoring guide: in consistent leadership, focused collaboration, distinguished teaching with a focus on students and the environment, distinguished teaching with a focus on content, instruction, and assessment, and continued professional growth. So we are very excited about the 4 people who have achieved this. 3 of them are renewals. So they did it once and then they had to renew for the next 5 years. And 1 is a brand new master teacher. We're excited. We're gonna. Okay, sure.
All right, I think we have a couple of them here tonight, but I will announce all of them. Sarah Parker is a marketing teacher at Heights High School in our CTE program. She went through it for the first time. And then we do have the ones that are renewed. We have Joyce Bukovic, math teacher at Heights High. She's here. Please come on down. We have Nancy Eisenberg, at the art teacher at the high school. She's here. And then Bridget Lambright, who's an English teacher at the high school. I don't know that she was able to join us, but let's clap for Bridget as well. They also will get a plaque that they can display at the high school.
So now we're on the consent agenda. Is that right, Mr. Gainer?
Correct. Which is, I think is pulling up there.
Would you,
So this includes item D, which is meeting minutes, item E, personnel, G, ed services, which is field trips, H, business services, items 1 and 2, and I, finance section.
okay, I'll accept a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any comments, questions?
So is the policy for the naming
No,
embedded in this?
it is not.
And
The
the two-
policy, item F is included, so the policy for approval, as well as items 3 and 4 under business services.
You pulled
So,
those.
yeah, those were
Not
pulled
part of
out.
this consent agenda.
There was a conversation that there may be some discussion that we would like to have concerning those issues, so they were pulled out so that we could discuss it.
So we're not voting on the
No.
F1 we're still gonna discuss, okay.
Yes.
Right.
And I apologize, I guess I should have called everybody and let them know what we were doing. I thought it would be best, given your, the way you like to examine certain things, I thought we would do that this time.
So underneath, it goes type, action, consent, so if it's, those are all the items on the consent agenda.
Correct.
Right.
Got it.
Any questions on the consent agenda?
I do have a question. Are we gonna hear back from Mr. Gaynor, and do we have a report later on? Because I have a question.
Yes.
Okay, then I'll save my question for then.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Gaynor, would you call the roll?
Mr. Register,
Yes.
Mr. Posh.
Yes.
Mr. Zucker.
Yes.
Mr. Silver.
Yes.
Ms. Wright.
Okay, this should move us to item F, I guess. Can you pull it up? One of the things that we've tried to do with board docs is make it a little bit more transparent to the public in terms of what we're actually voting on. The consent agenda are things that, just are sort of automatic and self-explanatory. But items that need further discussion we will have an opportunity for you to look at it. And I believe that you can see these things prior to coming to the board meeting. They're up on our website, correct?
Correct.
So we're on the third reading of the commemoration of school facilities, which is basically, we were approached about the potential of actually naming things and rooms and places and buildings and parks and what have you for individuals who may have done tremendous service to the district and felt like they needed to be potentially commemorated that way. And so we didn't ever have a policy, but if you've been around the district for a while, you see there are names on various things. And so we wanted to have a formal policy for that to happen.
Yeah, so this is the last draft that you have with the changes. So tonight, we need to get any thoughts that would go to Dr. Lombardo, so we can get the final draft once it's.
All right, so all comments that
You're
have
gonna
been
vote on
given to me
tonight.
are on
Are
this
already
document.
But they're just comments now, they haven't been incorporated in the document.
I think they have,
they have.
right?
Yeah, so what you have on the floor is, if you accept this as is right now, all those comments will be considered.
Yeah.
If you wanted to remove or take any of those comments out, a lot of them were edits of some sort, but right now on the floor to vote is all those comments being adopted in the policy right now.
So did everybody have a chance to look at this?
Yeah, I was gonna say, as someone who was, who brought this, who's been pushing this issue, I'm fine with the edits and changes that have been made and the suggestions and protocol. And so I'm fine with it if we vote on it this evening. Ideally, we have one that I shared with the board previously. If we could, I'd love to see us act on that one this evening as well, if possible.
Okay. Jim?
I'm fine with it.
I just, so you incorporated the thoughts that people put in. Some of the things I put in are comments of word structure. So as long as you clean it up, because a couple of things I didn't think were really understandable sentences. So just, I'm not gonna wordsmith it here because I just don't think that's the best use of people's time, but just if you could just take a look at those. I couldn't okay it the way it is because there's no resolution. It's just a question that isn't answered in that comment.
Okay.
So.
Understood.
Procedurally, what does that mean? Because this is actually the third reading, right?
Yeah, this is the third reading, so I will take, and Kel offered different ways of structuring those, so I will incorporate that into.
But there's a procedural question. We're not actually looking at the policy in its final state. Is that correct?
We are looking at it in its final state, given these changes will be adopted, so this will be the final state.
Cal, are you okay?
So if there are some things that need to be changed, we can talk about those now, and then we'll make that change. But these are all this would be the final state. Obviously, we'll clean it up and put it in the format.
I'm fine as long as they make it,
Okay. Eric,
makes sense.
you good?
Yeah, I'm good with it, yeah.
Okay. Then I think we probably need a motion to accept this policy.
So moved.
Okay. Any other conversation, discussion? Okay.
Just need a second.
Second.
Beverly, second.
Oh, I didn't hear, sorry.
Well,
Very quiet.
Scott heard her.
That's
It's important that she,
I have bad
no, I'm Okay, Mr. Gainer, would you call the roll?
Mr. Register,
Yes.
Mr. Bosch.
Yes.
Mr. Zucker.
Yes.
Mr. Silverman.
Yes.
Ms. Ray.
Yes.
Okay, so the policy stands, is adopted, and it'll be posted on the website shortly.
Correct.
Then the question would be for the name that I had suggested for administrative conference room. I gave you the copy for that. Are we able to act on that? I have copies of it this evening as well, if you'd like.
Yeah, I think now that we have a policy in place, I think it would be appropriate to re-enter that by way of motion or something like that. And we should follow the policy. And I'm not, how familiar, Mr. Lombardo, Dr. Lombardo? How familiar are you with the policy? And what, if we wanted to do something tonight, how can we make that happen?
As the policy states, we would, I am familiar with the policy, but you would make a motion, and then we would go through and look at the guidelines and criteria to see if it falls in place. This is a little different than most times we do something like this.
Okay. Does the policy require that the suggestion be submitted to the superintendent? Or tell me,
It actually-
talk about the procedure as it relates to the policy.
Well, it says here, if you look at the procedures, if we take what was commented, that's LP 11, the superintendent or the board president may place the request on the school board agenda of a regular board session meeting for discussion and consideration. So this would mean that it would have to go on prior to the meeting, is how I'm interpreting that. So I think there could be, there wouldn't be a motion tonight, but that name can be given to the board president or the superintendent, and then that could be brought forward to the next board meeting. That's how I'm reading that procedure there.
Okay.
Well, an argument can be made. I gave you a copy of it when we first brought it up at the first reading, and I think the issue is that, I guess the question, the only thing is I was hoping to get it done during I wanted to get it done during my term, because.
I think it would be acceptable to submit it after your term. I think that would be okay. I mean, or if we have a wish for us to do something different, I'll entertain it, but I think that would be appropriate.
Okay, I can give a copy to Mr. Lombardo to give to you right now. I'm sorry, give it to the superintendent, so that it can be handled for next year.
That's fine. So you'll give it to her.
Okay,
Just give it to the, yeah,
I will give it
be the
to,
superintendent and the board president.
I will give a copy to Paul. Okay.
We can talk about it later. Okay, so we will, what I'll do is your recommendation will go to the superintendent, and I will actually have a conversation with her prior to
Okay.
the end of the year, and the new board can definitely consider it.
Then I'll be coming back. I already see him.
Well, you can come back.
I already come back to school board
You
meetings.
know, you'll be a citizen, and we have public participation, so you can
Right. How long do I have at the microphone here?
Well, I think the next board meeting is actually the organizational meeting, and I think you should be working with the superintendent and treasurer to see exactly how you want to move your agenda forward.
I'm unfamiliar with it.
And
but I'll-
to December 31st, I'll work with them on it.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's two sort of standing members left of the board as of January 1st. I think you should talk to Beverly and I. You should share that with us, give it to Dr. Dixon, and I would suggest that you read this as a public statement.
Well, I think the policy, as I understand it, is pretty clear. So as far as I'm concerned, the recommendation needs to line up with the policy, and that would be on you.
Okay.
Okay. Yes.
I won't be part of the decision-making body, but I would just suggest the one thing that has always concerned me about this type of policy is the criteria that boards look at, because any given sets of boards have people they know very well, people that were very meaningful at a given moment in time. I think this is a tricky thing. So the only suggestion I might make, and again, do what you wish, but is to really be thoughtful of it. Should you come up with criteria? Should you have administrative guidelines, as they were, of how you go about choosing? Because again, I can think of a million people who I love well enough to say, name my entire house after them. Not that they really want that, but anyway, but still, just I'd say it's it's just a cautionary note. I think it's really important. That's very thoughtful.
Well, as I mentioned previously, and someone pushing this, I've taken into very familiar with this whole conversation and topic for a long time on a number of different components and aspects, and that's why in regard to this suggestion and nomination, I was very specific in regard to who I wanted to push, I wanted to suggest, as well as the space in the building, because I wanted to avoid some of the questions and concerns I know you're speaking of. I know the super and I have talked in other capacities in regard to when we're looking at the naming rights. So I was very specific, very particular on this, which is why I did this, I don't want to say deliberately, but I was very particular because I wanted to avoid some of the issues and challenges you were speaking of.
Well, I think now that we have procedures, that you're involved in developing those procedures, and you ought to be able to jump that hoop. So, if you were just somebody who's just hearing this for the first time, I would be a little bit concerned about if the hurdle was a little higher than you could reasonably understand. But in this case, I think you understand what the hurdles are to be able to master them. Okay. Okay, so the policy is in place, and I think we have, do we have another policy that we wanted to deal with?
At the end of the agenda, you have school calendar.
Oh, the calendar, okay.
Section J.
So we need to,
You're moving to H, which is H3 GMP.
That's what's up.
H3,
Approval of the GMP.
That's what's.
approval of GMP amendment number 02 for the middle Heights Middle Schools project.
Yes.
And I think we will have Doug come up and talk to us a little bit about this.
Hello. My name is Doug Myers with PMC, and tonight also with me is Jack Kellogg with Turner, and Ann Hartman. Turner Construction is the construction manager for the project. Moody Nolan is the architect for the project. And I have a lot of help with the presentation because I can't reach it from here.
Show them how to do that. Check slides, I think.
So we have good news tonight. We have an agenda that I put together basically to talk a little bit about the history for the overall project. Where are we now in consideration of the entire program? Yeah, the next thing we're going to talk about is the project scope. What are we doing? Then we're going to go ahead and we'll talk about the total project budget. So where are we with the total project, the project schedule, and then finally, project alternates and decision timelines. So there are two things actually on the board agenda right now with the GMP, and then there's also the C.
What's the GMP?
So the GMP is an amendment number 2 for Turner Construction, and it actually covers the costs of the middle school renovation projects.
And you use that language, what's GMP, what that stand for?
This is gross maximum,
Guaranteed.
guaranteed maximum cost. All right.
And could you explain what it means to a layperson who hears that language? What does it mean in practical terms?
Sure. We have selected we have selected a delivery method where we have a construction manager at risk that was brought onto the project. And so with that, the construction manager has worked with the owner and the architect during the development of the project. They've provided input with constructability and with scheduling and with cost estimating. And as part of this project, we develop the projects to a certain point. We give that to the construction manager, and then they actually work with subcontractors to bid out the project, and they put together a proposal
based on the 75% construction documents and design intent documents. And they put together their assumptions and qualifications, and they have a whole book of all of the drawings and specifications that is referenced, and they give a guaranteed maximum price of what they see the project cost is going to be for the district.
Okay.
So as a brief project history, the phase one for this building program is actually consisted of the Wiley Enabling Project, and that is complete. The high school project, which is occupied and being closed out, and then with the renovations for the Roxborough and Monticello Middle School renovations. On June 27th, we presented to the board, and they approved the renovations of these middle schools, and then in July, we approved the design development. So the design, the GMP that we're looking at tonight is actually the evolution of the drawings from the design development to where we are today. Can you go to the next slide, please?
Try that. You got the clip to try.
We may not reach.
I got it. I got it.
This is technology that's worse.
It may not reach from over.
Here, let me go.
Project scope for the middle schools. There are new finishes for paint, ceilings, carpet, and marker boards. We mostly have new systems in the building. There are going to be lighting replacements, heating, ventilation, air conditioning, a fire alarm system, and security modifications. For technology, we have new short throw projectors, wireless access points, paging systems, and clocks. And really, we'll do a minor renovation in the rear of Monticello for the main entrance, lower level locker rooms. And then in Roxborough, we'll be doing lower level renovations. And then we also, as we were putting together the project, we have a lot of things that the district wants to do. We have concerns about the budget. So as we put the project together, we have a series of alternates that we have put together. We'll get into some more detail with that. But those will also be part of the final scope as the district decides to choose those. So this slide shows the total project budget summary. At the very top, we can see the funding that we have available for bonds, donations, and anticipated interests is $158.3 million. As we can see the project costs below, we've broken down the 4 different scopes. The high school is coming in at $102.5 million. For Roxborough and Monticello, they're both around $17 million. The enabling project, we have about 18.9 with a total project cost of $156.5 million. So we take that, we compare that to the funds available, and that gives us a delta of $1.7 million. So the reason this is important is as we put together the project, we have to obviously make sure that we're within all of the budget, but we also want to make sure that we can give the district as much as they want for scope. So there are different opportunities as we develop the project where the district can make decisions on basically adding some scope to the project. The project funding versus delta, that's already available to the district so that we can go ahead, we can now make some decisions with the BAC committee and recommendations as to how that wants to go. As I get into more of the discussion of the project, we'll see other opportunities. Some of the things to note is this GMP is based off of the 75% construction documents, which we think right now is kind of the best practice. This, as the project was initially bid and the GMP came in lower than what the estimates were, the first thing we did was we adjusted owner contingency. So right now, the costs for the middle schools include $1.2 million, approximately 5% of the construction costs for owner contingency that's available for change orders and decisions by the owner as we go forward. A final thing to kind of consider in the project is that the GMP does include $2.7 million of allowances. And the allowances are used for items that can't really be quantified by the construction manager at this time. So as we're going through and we're talking about the GMP, we've kind of agreed that we have a list of items for the different subcontractors for scope that can't quite be quantified. But as we go through construction, we know that we're gonna be doing it. So as we do the construction manager then will be logging those costs. And as we get through construction, if we find that those costs aren't coming to fruition, then those can be available to the owner for other uses. Or if the costs are exceeded, then those can become a change order. But that's another item where we have costs built into the project. And these are a lot of things that kind of help mitigate as we go through the project to make sure that we're covering the risks that the project team sees on the project.
Now, on the
I'm
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was, on the high school project, I think we had I think what they called a design contingency. Would the 2.7 that we're talking about in the GMP be equivalent to that, sort of, that as you narrow and focus in on and the high school was supposed to be, as you narrowed in and finalized what it was, either the dollars were allocated or they were released. Is that comparable to that, or is that a different,
Yeah.
am I mixing nomenclature, or am I in the ballpark?
The design contingency is really kind of absorbed into the project at this
Okay,
point.
gotcha,
Because we have the construction costs from
Gotcha.
the construction manager.
okay, gotcha.
So really, we have several different types of contingency in the project. The construction manager has 3%, which they're asking for in the GMP. So that is for the construction manager to use for items that they haven't anticipated, or for cost acceleration, or for issues that they have with their subcontractors, okay?
Just staying with this for a minute, does it mean that if something like that happens, we're looking at a change order?
With the construction management contingency, we're not looking for a change order.
Okay,
That is all handled with them, within them.
so are we talking about the 2.7?
No, that would be allowances.
Okay, so we don't see the money that you're talking about now?
No,
Okay, who's the construction manager?
Turner Construction.
Okay, so Turner has a pot of money that they can use to make modifications, so if their red paint, instead of costing $5, goes up to $6, they can just make that change without coming before the board? Would that, something like that be,
That's something.
they could use it out of their contingency?
Yeah, and let me correct myself, as far as, the district does see those, because with PMC and with working with the district, those changes and those contingency usage are approved by the owner, so that we're aware of them, but it's really within the control of the construction manager.
So we were all given a flash drive with the GMP.
Right.
And near the end of that document, I think Exhibit 1 lists the allowances. An example of one is tile in the bathrooms,
Yes.
okay? So, and that's part of the 2.7 million. So if it costs more to take the tile out because you don't quite know how much it's cracked, there's a certain dollar amount that's included in that 2.7 million that
Exactly.
the Turner can just arbitrarily use for that purpose.
Yes. Well, we would be working with the designers, and if we decided that we wanted to tile the entire bathroom, and that exceeded what the contingency, for which, what the allowance line item is, then that would be a change order.
Right.
If we decide that we don't need to renovate or replace that much, and at the end of the project, that would turn over.
So we have a 5% owner's contingency, and we have a 3%. So that would, if my math is correct, that would give us theoretically then at least an 8% contingency, correct, between the two?
The construction manager's contingency is really outside the owner's contingency. So it is to cover the risks that they have on the project.
Okay, so realistically, we should, so I should view in this context, the Turner's, the 3% is more for if they, right now, they think this is gonna cost $100,000, but it ends up, the bid comes in at 110, and let's make it 103, they use it for that. If they open up a wall and say, ooh, this is worse than it is, then it comes out of R5.
Right.
Okay.
Unforeseen conditions will
Gotcha.
become change orders.
So in reality, the Turner contingency is more based upon market conditions, whereas the 5% is based upon building conditions.
The 5% would be, one of the uses for the owner to use 5% would be for unforeseen
Right.
conditions.
Gotcha, okay.
Changes.
Could you explain
and
what,
alternatives, potentially.
That could potentially be a choice for that, yes.
could you break down the enabling project?
I could do that, and I could forward you that information. For tonight, I didn't bring all that detail for the enabling project.
Okay.
Just, when we got started, we had to do quite a bit of work to get Wiley up to snuff so that it could be functional
Right.
as a high school. So that's enabling, in this case, that's what you're looking at, is actually getting the Wiley building in shape to use.
Well, and I believe it also probably would, I think there was some stuff that we did at the two middle schools.
Yeah, there was some other things that happened to it, but basically the way, I guess we could have all that broken down and you could take a look at it. But it's actually, water under the bridge is one statement that we could use in that regard. But all those documents are still available to us. So you could go by the board and ask for it, and I guess George would be the person that would provide that information for you. Doug actually is less familiar with that than George is, I think. George, could you kind of speak to that?
Thank you.
The enabling project does include, it was brand-new electrical transformer service to the high school for the modulars. It includes the modulars, it includes asbestos abatement that was unforeseen. We did not, starting out, expect to spend that much money.
Okay.
It was mainly due to unforeseen circumstances that came up, and we needed to correct them to get the students in the building.
Okay, thank you.
I can provide you with all that
Okay.
background if you want.
Can we get a little bit more clarity on the Turner's contingency, the 3%? Because I'm looking at it total from the documents that we had, that basically was 180,000. And then I see what looks like in the contract, 700,000?
Yes.
A ballpark
Yes.
number. So the 700,000 is the contingency.
Yes, and so when we brought Turner on, we first started with an agreement. And that agreement included a contract sum, their estimate of work, some of their general conditions. So they started with an agreement, and then as we have the GMP, this is actually an amendment to that agreement. So for this GMP right now, there's, as you mentioned, the contingency of 180,000, but already in the project that has not been spent, that is still available, was 521 that is already in their agreement. So we have the initial agreement, and then you have the amendments to that, and then the total sum.
Okay, so the ballpark, it's the 700.
Correct.
And, okay, so we're nearly at around, 1.9 million in contingency out of essentially a 30 million. Actually, the GMP is coming lower, so it's 27 million essentially.
Right, for the GMP.
Yes.
Yeah, the cost-
Yes.
The cost of work is 27 million.
Right, and you're doing your percentages off the
Cost.
GMP, the cost of work as opposed to the DD estimate.
Right, the cost of
Got it,
this.
okay,
Yes.
I'm clear. Thank you.
Project schedule, we're requesting the GMP tonight. Moody Nolan is completing the construction documents, so they're taking them to 100%. Those will be turned over to the construction manager, who can then go ahead and give those back to their subcontractors to kind of, to rebid, to relook at the project, to make sure that it falls within their assumptions and qualifications. And at this point, they will get prices from their subcontractors. Now, this is kind of where the risk comes in. If the prices come back and they're higher, then that's on the construction manager to go ahead and take care of it. Unless we have added scope or there were things that were clearly missed in the construction documents. If the prices come in lower, then those was considered bid-day savings. And that would be something that would be available for the district to be able to use for alternates or to increase their owner contingency. So along that timeline, in February, we have a series of alternates. We've worked with the construction manager to go ahead and to kind of identify dates for the alternates as to when we need to make decisions. So in February, we'll have a wave of decisions. We'll be working with the BAC to make recommendations. We'll be presenting those to the board for approvals. In February, Turner will start to mobilize on the project. Construction will take place from March 2018 to July 2019. In June, we'll have owner occupancy, and we'll start classes in 2019. Okay.
Just to be clear, the fact that it shows construction going beyond owner occupancy, do you want to explain what that means? So we're going to occupy while they're doing construction, or you're a month after?
Yes, and this is a little bit where we're pushing to be everything done in, we are going to start moving in, just like with high school. There's so much that the district needs to do. So we'll work closely with Turner Construction, and we're anticipating that we'll be getting that final occupancy and the inspections and everything else earlier, and then there'll be items in July, that'll be punch list items and items like that will be finished up.
But
Yes.
to be clear, because it's the months of the year it's not student occupancy, it's just owner
It's-
occupancy.
Exactly, yeah, the start of classes won't happen, so, yep.
Where are we trending in regard to market conditions? We saw bid day savings when we did the football project, but then with the awarding of the convention for the RNC and other things, market conditions changed, which we saw. So we saw bids come in higher than we expected. Now our GMP numbers seem to be going in a much better trend. So the question I would pose is, do we see any kind of, obviously you can't crystal ball, but are we seeing, is the market still very, very hot, if you will, where it's very tight, where you're not going to get a lot of bids, or are we seeing it trend the other way, where there's more possibility for bid day savings?
The team had those concerns, and we actually extended the bid date, and we actually worked closer with contractors to make sure that we got bids, and the bids that came in were better than what the estimates
Okay,
were.
good.
So I think it's very favorable to the district right now.
Okay.
Okay. Next one, George. We got that? Yeah. Okay. So to add further discussion with decisions and with opportunities for the project that we have alternates and we have decision timelines. And as we mentioned, right now, the documents reflect the 75% construction documents. They're going to be developed, but we have alternates that we already have prices for. So what are the other sources of funds for the total project that we have? And again, these would be choices for the district, but I wanted to, to make you aware of them. The project funding versus the cost delta, that's available now. The unused high school CMR contingency, that's pretty much available. We'll probably have the final change order, it's coming up soon, but that will be available. Potential bid day savings, it may or may not happen, but those we would see in February, and that's right on the time where we need to have an alternate direction. Okay, so we have choices and we have funds available to make those decisions. Part of the CMR contingency is throughout the course of the project, the contract allows for times for us to sit down with the CMR. That's a contingency to cover risks. If those risks don't come to fruition, we can sit down with them and we can ask them for some of that back. So as we've worked with Turner, we've established the 25, 50, and 75% milestone dates, and we've synced those up with the construction schedule. So when they start, they're going to mobilize, they're going to start the demolition, we'll start our abatement. That is a huge part of the risk that the project has. At the end of that, which is going to be right around June, we're going to sit down and we'll have a discussion. We'll see, have we spent the CMR contingency? Do we think we're going to spend it? Can some of that come back? If that comes back, then that would be part of what the owner can use for other decisions on the project. We'll continue on with those 75, 50%. And then also, as I mentioned before, to help manage all the risks. It is a renovation project. There will be things that our engineers, architects, and construction manager haven't seen as we start to tear everything out. If we find that we're not spending the allowances, those also would become available.
Where are we right now, and what do we anticipate in the unused high school CMR contingency?
Right around 400,000.
Okay, and does the numbers that you mentioned in the earlier slide, I know there was, with changes in the contract we have with PMC and the scope of work as well, that are those additional dollars in the numbers here, or that's still not added into the,
Those are all in the total.
okay, so those are already,
So it's,
okay,
yeah,
gotcha.
it might be within the project, but it,
Gotcha, it goes back to that, instead of viewing it as little pots, it's more viewing it back as one large.
it
Gotcha,
already
okay.
was absorbed by owner
Okay.
contingency.
So theoretically, if we're able to come out of the high school with another, with 400, let's, 300, if we're able to have 300,000, that theoretically we can put into contingencies, and then as we move forward, we could then use it towards the alternate decisions.
Yes.
Then the question I would pose is, on the earlier materials we received, there's a number of alternates primarily with like paint, carpet, and finishings. Now, in the new GMP, those items were in there, so I'd be curious, I don't know if you have it still obviously still needs to be worked on. What are we looking at in regard to alternates that you'd be potentially examining in February and June?
Yes, I did, if you want to go.
Or is that, am I jumping ahead?
It actually, I put it in here
Oh,
just in case
okay.
you wanted to talk about it, which I think that might be about.
Okay, then I can wait.
Yeah, actually, this is a good time to go ahead. This Q&A section, we'll right into it. I think
Q&A?
we can go one more slide. Yeah, so this is the slide we broke down as a mission. We work with Turner so that we have February alternates, and then going across, you can see we have Monticello, we have Roxborough, we have the total. We have several alternates for the elevator, or I'm sorry, for February, and then lower you can see we have June, and then we have totals. So that's why one of the things I wanted to talk about, we're not making any requests for alternates tonight. We have time to go ahead to absorb all of this, to see the funds that are available. We can work to help prioritize these, and then we're gonna be doing them a step at a time, but it gives us the opportunity to try to make those decisions and add them.
Okay, so for clarity, the fire suppression system is not on the agenda tonight. It's,
The fire, right, the fire suppression
Okay.
is not on the agenda.
okay, great. Obviously, I sent some emails. I'm real curious to see a little bit more information
There will
about
be-
that and the
we'll have
rationale.
more discussion about that, so that
Yeah, it's an alternate, but it was,
Yeah,
I know you wanted an answer on that, but I think that's great for a February conversation. It seems like there's two things that may need to come out of PI that are not included in this. One of them is taking the Wiley property and essentially, once the trailers are off, returning it back to where it's at, where it needs to be in order to pass
And
UH.
that's in the 5-year projected PI budget.
Okay.
That's part of that, that's not part of this.
Good, okay, so at least you have a source of funds for that.
Correct.
And the bus depot.
You're right, at the end of the day, that'll be part of bringing the bus depot back to Wiley, so it'll be that cost.
Okay, and that's something that,
We have, right now, it's currently, it's a very low number, but I keep a line item. I think I have 300,000, but that's just gonna probably do the concrete.
yeah,
But that's also going to be part of the work of the new BAC
Right.
to help us prioritize. So we have those lists of those items in PI, but the BAC will look at those funding sources plus the alternate and really prioritize our next steps.
yeah, I know, but it's still monies that, I mean, we have to.
We have to spend.
I mean,
it.
these are
We
two
have to
things we
spend.
have to do. They're not like alternates, it's money that we have to spend, so.
Right, but there are two parts. There's the alternates, these lists, but also the items that we have in our PI budget, prioritizing those. So for example, we may decide to take something that we had listed for 2020, 21 and move it up to 18, 19 to take out a PI. But again, we'll have that group to help us prioritize those things.
Okay, so I guess the real net, I mean, the really good news here is we thought we had $30 million worth of work to get done. And we think it's gonna cost around, 227 million something, which gives us, 2.x something.
The good news is we can actually look at and do alternates that
Yeah.
we're hoping to do.
That's great news.
I know, because I won't be here in the future, my question I would pose is, my concern is the allocating, the fire suppression in the two buildings is about 1.8, almost $1.9 million. The question I would pose is, why is a fire suppression system, which isn't mandated, isn't for student safety, it's basically for asset protection, why put the fire suppression in as opposed to pulling dollars out of PI for the roofs? Because I know, I would, my understanding, I understand you're gonna come back and say, well, it's because for phase two dollars from the state for the 14% match. But I know I've asked before, and I don't recall ever receiving, we have no hard date for phase two funding. So the question I would pose is, and I think going forward, the board needs to deliberate, the allocation of $1.5 million now for the potential of the match from the state, which we don't know if or when we'll receive.
We discussed this and we decided to pull it off for a couple of reasons. And it's because it deserves more discussion.
Yeah.
Do we not? We can't predict the
Right.
future. Will we ever see the state money? We don't know. But if we don't do that now, you realize we'll have to close both middle schools down and move students out to do that work.
Well,
So part of the discussion has to be, if we don't do it, then we have to be willing to give up that money for the middle schools. It's just a discussion has to be had,
well, the reason,
if it ever does come.
let me put it this way. Previously, it was conveyed to the board, either not as a group or in small group session, that sprinklers would be something that would be easy to plug in, if you will. That was the way it was conveyed. Now, for you to say the building's gotta be closed, that is vastly different from what we were previously described as, oh, it'll be easy to plug
Well,
in.
we could bid it out, and we can do the work, but to do that amount of work, all the ceilings have to come
Right.
down,
Oh, yeah.
you have to put the piping, to do that over a month and a half, over 2 months of summer would be difficult in both schools.
Right.
Well, I mean, I guess maybe one of the things that can be looked at is, can it be staged off over a
And
multi-year?
maybe, I think that's part of the discussion that we want to have. We have very talented people on the BAC. We feel that there's an opportunity to bring that along with the other alternates to the table and discuss it and see what is going to be in the best interest of our students.
Well, I mean, one of the questions I would ask the BAC is, one, I mean, sort of like, you do it now or you do it later, what's the cost differential? So I think that would be helpful.
And we're looking at, Doug was already looking at that.
Perfect, okay.
And the reason why I'm harping on the roofs is because many of your predecessors ago, it was, they drilled into my head, keep the water out. That's why, to me, I think there's a much more substantial value in maintaining the roofs.
That's not lost on us.
Yeah,
We've already
yeah.
discussed on potentially pulling PI
Right.
money in
Right.
to do the roofs right now while the buildings are shut down. So
I mean,
it's being discussed.
I'd love to do windows, but I know that the cost, because I think it would, when we're looking at putting $30 million into two buildings, without the replacement windows, it does, for the casual observer, it's not gonna be obvious, unless you have a new roof. The issue ends up being is that ship has sailed. I've given up on that particularly because of the potential for cost creep when we start pulling the windows out. Conversely, I think, I feel that the roofs, to me, that's,
And I did, just so you are aware, I asked Greg Taylor, for Taylor Consulting, who's done our roof values
Right.
since I've been here, to update that 10-year plan, and he's doing that for me.
Okay.
I expect to have them in next week.
Good.
George, your suggestions obviously that warrants further discussion. I think we're proving that, so I think you made your point. Just to be clear on the alternates, just for the future, is there's some negative numbers on there, and so most people would say, oh, I'll take that one. But those relate to the item above it, right? So really, is that correct, that the three negatives rows relate to the item immediately above it?
No, those are actually line items that were recommended at the time of bidding. There could be cost savings if the owner chooses to take
Take it
those.
to the left. yeah.
So it goes to the left. So-
Okay. Okay,
For
so-
instance, if we want to use MC cable,
Okay,
Is that
so
right?
obviously, when you get to that discussion you're gonna have with the future board, just be sure they understand exactly what, okay.
Just a question, we would be looking at making decisions about those first set of alternates in February.
correct.
It would seem to me, and this is sort of to the two of you, that maybe the work session in January ought to be directly related to this, so that people can really get grounded and be in a position to kind of understand these alternates and so on. I think there's a couple of new board members in the audience, but I think they probably need a session that will really ground them in this. So anyway, just a suggestion. I can quit working December 31st, so maybe I should not make that recommendation. But I think it would be really good. I think it's good that a couple of board members are here, and they'll probably be, know a little bit and be able to move forward. But I think we ought to be able to understand those alternates. If I think about us, we've gone through the buildings, we've seen a lot of stuff, and they're gonna be starting from scratch, so my recommendation.
When is the next BAC meeting? Is that scheduled yet?
Mid-January.
Does it make sense for the new board members and existing board members to attend that meeting, just so you don't have to do the presentation twice?
For the BAC meeting?
I mean, I'll leave it up to you, but I mean, it may operationally, it may be easier, but it may complicate things too. So I would leave it up to you, but it's a possibility.
Well, we can kind of talk about the format because they will actually have their task at hand. They'll be working the BAC, of dividing up and kind of deciding what some of these alternates are going to be and looking at costs, et cetera. I agree with the suggestion if we have maybe another special session in which we're explaining, kind of getting everyone up to speed is probably our best next course of action.
Yeah, and I wouldn't try to impose anything on the retiring board members beyond December 31st.
You really want out, don't you?
Well, I think that if you're in a situation where you have to choose coming to a board meeting in January versus almost anything else in the world, you're probably gonna do anything else in the world.
Well, I'll give you a different reason that I agree with you. I mean, and seriously, one of the problems with people who've been on a board for a while is their words carry some weight whether they're still on the board or not. I don't think it's fair to the new board members to do it, frankly.
Well, that's 2/3, so that should be enough.
I don't know what your rest of your presentation, I have a couple of questions in regard to details of the alternates. Just want to make for clarification. So basically, to do paint and carpet for all of the exterior, that's going to be part of the bid alternates. Because I know we had a base bid and we were listing the alternates, so, okay, the media center or this office backspace, those are right now in the alternates as opposed to the base bid, correct?
Right, the list that we have up there is not included in the base bid.
Okay, so the same thing would be for the gymnasiums as well?
Yes.
Okay, and then we were talking about sprinklers and roofs. Auditoriums. I do not see painting of the auditoriums in here. Is painting of the auditoriums not in the alternate list? The reason I ask is if you're painting the entire building and you have new seats and new flooring, and then you have dingy leftover paint in the auditoriums, that would seem to be an odd choice. Okay, and I would assume the same, we're going down that pathway. I know the ceiling at Monticello is extremely unattractive. I know that obviously because I'm not sure if it's, I know it was never considered even the alternates. The question I would pose, then keep going down kick that can down the road. If you're painting the walls and you've got the ceiling that looks horrid, then again, for consideration for that. The same I guess I don't want to mispronounce it, the archway over the stage at Roxborough, the work has, the proscenium, am I mispronouncing it or not, has water damage from the kitchen above it. I'm assuming repairing of that is not in the alternate list currently. Okay. Let me see what else I had. The ceiling tiles in the hallways at Roxborough have that 1950s acoustical tile, like they put you in a quiet room while they interrogate you at the police station. That is staying, correct?
Right now.
Okay, that would be, but it's not in the base bid, it's not on the alternate list either, is it? Okay. And I think, I know the two kitchens, I know we're not planning to do any work on them. Of the two, I think Roxborough, obviously, one's from the 70s, the other one's from the 1920s. Has there been any consideration if we see a positive trend on this, to do work at Roxborough's kitchen?
No.
Okay.
It's been, we've had ADI, our partner with Internet Service now, they've come in and evaluated both kitchens.
Okay.
And have developed a list of equipment that we could purchase
Okay.
in a couple of different fashions.
going down that path, and the question I posed in that regard, is now we're moving stuff, we're doing work, is there value in exploring if a kitchen work at Roxborough required utility lines or what have you?
That's already been in.
Okay, that's what I was going, because I would rather, in my opinion, it'd be better to, even if you don't know when it's gonna be for AVI to do it, it'd be better to do the modifications now and then, okay.
Well, Eric, what we have to do, and I know this is gonna be a tough thing, but after December 31st, we're gonna have to trust that we put enough in place so that it will go smoothly. And I think, you seem to be worried about something, but I'm gonna tell you, there's not much we can do about what happens after December 31st.
Well, I'm well aware of that, I'm looking for clarity because I got a PDF that had a whole litany of things, and these are questions and concerns, and I wanted to get them.
Well, I'm trying to encourage you to begin to develop a new outlook. That in fact, it's gonna happen with us or without us. I'm just, you do what you do what you do, but I'm just giving you some encouragement.
I understand, and I will bite my tongue in my response to what you're saying.
Okay, that's great. You're learning.
No, you know what? Okay. What I was going to say was, I would greatly appreciate it if you would scale back the condescension. I understand what you're saying. I hear what you're saying. What I'm trying to do is get clarity for questions, because we used to have regular meetings on a subcommittee structure so I could pose these questions. We did away with that, so now I'm asking those questions.
But, I mean, that's fine. I've said what I had to say.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay.
Well, what is it?
So we need to vote on the GMP.
Oh, I do have one question.
Go ahead.
My question would be, I posed a question before previously. The color palette that was submitted in one of the presentations that we got, that we're sticking with that, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
That's like,
Yeah, that was backup information. That shows what we were talking about, the First Amendment. And so they had the current amount, and then this request is the amendment number 2. And then the final total, which is what will be totally contracted to Turner after this amendment is approved.
So the amendment that we're approving tonight is agreeing, it's a signed contract. It's authorizing, Scott, are you on this? It's authorizing us to sign a contract for the GMP. Okay. I still have work to do, huh? Okay. Okay, anything else? Mr. Gaynor, would you call the roll?
We need a motion.
Hmm?
We still need a motion.
We haven't, okay. We need a motion to approve the GMP.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Mr. Gaynor, would you call the roll?
Mr. Register?
Yes.
Mr. Posh?
yes.
Mr. Zucker? Yes. Mr. Silverman?
No.
Ms. Wright?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. The end.
Right
Um, then we have to go back to the,
We need to get rid of that.
go back to the agenda, right?
Hold on. Right.
Oh,
How's that? Item H4. H4? Yes.
we need to, we gotta do, H4? Okay, we need, a motion to approve the authorization of change orders. That's a resolution? Okay, so we need to approve that resolution. I need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion or questions or clarifications?
Okay, so we're approaching this differently than we approached the high school.
Somewhat, yes.
Well, a lot. So basically, any decision that's being made from this point on in the middle schools is essentially out of the board's hands.
It's
the business
essentially
reasons.
what?
It's out of the board's hands.
No,
What is it?
No.
Yeah.
Well,
it's the same, it is the same process. What you had,
Would you get to the mic,
The
George?
The approval of the purchase, what you're authorizing, we spoke with Steve Friedman at length over this, and it's very similar to what was set up previously. What it does allow is for the project to continue without being stopped for, if I need $1,000 change order to do something, I'd have to stop the project to come to the next board meeting to say, we need to do this. What it authorizes is for my position to make decisions up to $50,000 at a time, and you would still be informed. We plan on monthly reports.
We have monthly
Right,
reports that
to
we
the board.
update.
Of every decision that was made, you would be updated at least monthly, if not twice a month, if it dictated. Anything over 50,000 has to come to you as a change order.
And as George mentioned, we spoke with the legal counsel, Steve Friedman. This actually was the same process that was followed before. I think what happened was we ran into some budget issues, and that's why there was, and that would, more detail shown. However, the $50,000 threshold, so any change orders
Right.
that come in below that, anything above that, larger items would come to the board for approval. And those kind of items, and we can go ahead, we can have the construction team, manage around those. If we have a lot of small items that are there, we kind of need to be able to make the approvals on.
At a minimum, you're going to get at least once a month, you're going to update. And like I said, if it demands, we'll do twice a month. At the work session, you'll get another paper update from Doug and myself that will list any decisions that were made that were under 50,000.
So will we be voting on the change orders under 50,000?
No.
No.
You're voting on giving me the authority to make that decision.
That's what that resolution is.
But that's not how we've done the high school, though. The high school, we did.
We had the ability, the staff had the ability to approve change orders under 50,000.
Yes.
That was part of how we did the high school.
Well, I guess the question would be,
We had change orders that we approved that were under 50,000.
Remember, when we got to a certain point, we started bundling the change orders. So you had individual change orders that were less, but the bundles were more. We approved, we bundled change orders and approved a set at a time as opposed to approving $45,000 change order.
When they were discussed, they were broke. You've seen smaller amounts, $36,000 for a lint, steel repairs. It was broken out purposely so you can understand what they were.
Is there a reason why we have to decide on this tonight? You're not going to be approving any change orders within the next 30 days, 60 days. I'd like a little bit more clarity on this and a little bit more of a policy.
Well, right now, the policy, there's a state law that authorizes the Director of Business Services to makes those decisions, and this is in line with that. Again, we consulted Steve Friedman, and this is typically done throughout the state of Ohio in just this fashion.
Well, I don't want to suggest or give you the impression I'm trying to handcuff you, because I trust what you're doing. I just feel like I need a little bit more clarity on this. I wasn't on the board when you would have passed this identical resolution before, and I'd like to go back and look at what we've done in the past. I would like a little bit more clarity, and it doesn't seem like we need to make this decision right now.
Okay, let's do a point of order. There's a motion, there's a second, and, I guess, you are making a recommendation, and I think, the recommendation has to be to table the motion, I believe, and then we would vote on whether or not we table the motion.
so you
I think, Mr. Parliamentarian, is that correct?
Yeah, that would be the process.
So you want to make a motion to table the motion?
If anybody has anything else to discuss, I would like to give them the opportunity to discuss it, obviously, but I would like to make that motion when we're done.
Does anybody have any other conversation around this motion that they would like to interject into the conversation at this point?
So the board members who were there at the time could sort of at least give you some clarity, and it may not be enough, you're the one who's decided that, but is that this is really considered best practice. And the reason it's a best practice, again, is as you said, you don't want to handcuff anyone. The point is to keep the project moving because any delays cause escalations, as you might imagine. It is state law, it is legal, our legal counsel who we've trusted in the past, recommends it. What I hear slightly different than before, and this, please don't take this as a negative about before as much as a positive about now, is it sounds like what we've learned from the past is a stronger communications channel. And even though these are things that can be done without even, frankly, legally, you don't even really have to bring it to us on any sort of monthly basis. I think that would give much more clarity as here's all the things we've done. And it would be very transparent then in the word that people like to use now. So I will say that at the time, I remember us asking a lot of questions about, like you are, Jim, but it was made clear to us that it really was what the construction manager needed in order to keep the job rolling forward. They need someone, a point person who can make decisions on the spot. So if that, I don't know if that helps. That's my recollection.
Well, and I think George should have that opportunity. I mean, there's no question about it. I'm just looking for a little bit more clarity. I'd be curious in more of the process that actually goes through in making those decisions.
I can speak towards that. So as we have, the contract has a clear procedure for change management. So if the construction manager says something that's outside of what the project is, they'll put together an RFI, request for information, and then the architect and their team of engineers will review that, and they'll make a comment on it. And if they see that that's outside the scope of the project, then they'll put together actually a bulletin. And that'll clarify the scope of work. The construction manager then would work with their subcontractors to put together prices for those. The prices are then presented to the team, the architect, the engineers, myself, George, review all of that. We vet through it after the construction manager has already vetted it through their subcontractors. We come to an agreement of the costs and if there's any time or anything else that's associated with that change, and then that change order is put together and it's reviewed, and if it's approved, it goes forward. If not, it goes back to the contractor to negotiate, what the final change should be. And then as far as change management, so the architect's keeping a track of all the pending change orders and all the change orders that are executed, so that we can constantly compare those to the contingency and the funds that we have available, so that we can make sure that we're not exceeding any funds that we have in the project. And that happens at every job meeting, so we're reviewing those items, and it's all, we can make that as transparent as we'd like to see, but that will be the project within the team.
So I guess one of my concerns while I'm looking for a little bit more clarity is the high school project and the Wiley Enabling Project. There were a lot of surprise change orders. I'm going to say, from everybody. I'm not saying the board. I think we as a district were surprised. And I'm very curious in how we're going to be handling that in the future. I'm looking for a little bit more clarity on the state regulations. I don't want to see George's hands tied. We need to move forward with the project. We can't delay things for Turner, obviously. Getting a little bit more information on these just to make sure we don't have some of the change order issues that we had in the high school and the middle school. I think asking for some clarity and asking for some process and a little bit more information before we approve this tonight is warranted, which is why I'd like to put a motion on the table to table this until January. This gives you enough time to give us a little bit more information, and I could outline what my questions are, and we can vote on it then.
And is it possible maybe we can get what the state mandates are, and maybe we can get a website or something and look into that to make you a bit more comfortable? Or what state regulations are,
And possibly talking to Steve Friedman. I mean, I think that makes sense.
The state doesn't mandate it, it's an authority that's granted to Ohio Revised Code.
Yeah.
Okay, so, is there anything else before Jim puts forth his motion?
Well, I'm waiting to second it.
Okay, Jim,
I'd like to put a motion to table this until January.
Second.
any further discussion on the tabling? Mr. Gainer, I think the rule would say we would vote on the motion to table first, right?
Sure.
Mr. Register,
No.
Mr. Posh,
Yes.
Mr. Zucker,
No.
Mr. Silverman,
Yes.
Ms. Wright.
No.
Okay, the motion to table fails, so that means we go back to the main motion. Mr. Gaynor? So the main motion is that we would, we have a resolution authorizing, basically, I'm interpreting it, I don't have the exact wording, but it basically authorized the staff, the business manager, to approve change orders for under $50,000 as it relates to the middle school project. Any further discussion?
I'm gonna vote no for this because I feel like I need more information to vote on something like this, so.
Well, I mean, cast your vote or say whatever. I mean, I don't think anybody's hands are tied to vote any particular way. I think there are probably a couple of people on the board who thinks it's expeditious to be able to do it that way. And I think that does not preclude you from getting whatever information. The administration is gonna provide you with the information you want, is my guess.
Well, we'll see about that. I mean, keep in mind, we had this board subcommittee where we were supposed to be discussing those, and all of a sudden those meetings stopped. So I'm not sure about that. So
Well,
we'll have to see. I'm
Mike,
hopeful.
is there any other?
Well, I would say, Mike, if one of the two board members going forward wants to have some more conversation on it, we have 3 new board members coming in, and change orders was a big flashpoint in regard to the project. I understand the logic, I understand we don't want to handcuff people's hands, or that seems to be redundant. The reality is that if it's not going to impinge, we're not going to make any actions over the next 2 weeks anyway. So I see nothing wrong with Mr. Posh getting the information he wants.
Anything else? Cal? Any thoughts? Beverly, you voted to take it, not to table. You got any thoughts about where we are? You're gonna be around come January too.
This is true. I mean, I think we can provide the information that Jim wants, but I just like to see, I don't want anything to be, stagnated. I want it to just go on and move forward.
Well, the staff and our owner's rep have clearly said that this would not necessarily interfere with any projects they're having. And if we go forward in January to have a work session with the new board members, I guess it could be considered at that point. I guess, I don't know, my thinking is that good business would dictate that we move forward with this, but I guess I could suck it in. Anybody else, anything else? I don't know what to do with this one.
We just have to vote, it's either votes.
All around.
Yeah, but I don't know how to vote.
Well, I think we do know.
Well,
I'll tell you how
I'm good. Okay, do you want to say something on the record?
That's fine.
Okay, Mr. Gaynor, would you call the roll?
Mr. Register,
Yes.
Mr. Posh,
No.
Mr. Zucker,
Yes.
Mr. Silverman,
No.
Ms. Wright.
Yes.
Okay, the motion carries. Okay, do we take I-1 through 5, or we gotta take them one at a,
You have, you did those as part of the consent.
Yeah, this is consent.
huh?
They were part of the consent agenda.
Okay. So we got the superintendent's report.
Oh, wait, I thought we were coming back to Scott. I had a question.
Well, we
for
could,
Scott.
or I can jump in under Dr. Dixon's report, however you want to do it. If you want to ask any questions now, I'm happy.
Well, I had a finance question.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, the question I was posed, I emailed you, and you weren't able to, but I want to address it because a little bit in public. Our wonderful friends in Washington are looking to change the ability, the cap, the deduction people get from state and local taxes. Now, I do not hit $10,000 a year in state and local taxes, but I think there's a number of homeowners in Cleveland Heights who would. are you able to ascertain how many households that might impact? Because if my math is correct, that we're approximately $3,000 per 100,000 evaluation, then that means homes valued at over three and a quarter, those homeowners would then be capped, correct? If my math is on?
Correct. And
Okay.
so to your point, and that certainly is a concern with the new tax bill, that it's going to make it more difficult for districts to pass levies because of the caps that are there. So I've made the request, and I know many other districts have, of the county to provide us a listing of all the possible, given the current millage and the current home values, what that would result in.
Just to expand on your math, and you probably know this better than I do, I haven't looked at the tax bill closely enough, but is the tax bill, is it individual property tax versus income tax? Because I thought it was gross them together. So if you're saying 300,000, that's given no income tax.
Well, that's
no local
exactly.
state
Well, that's what, so theoretically, if you start
So it's
throwing
even
income,
lower.
I would say you throw in, I was going purely on property tax, because I
Right.
don't want, based to your point, that actually would substantially expand
Right.
the percentage of homes. So
And
that-
I don't know, though, I'm just saying,
Right.
that was
But
my original understanding.
I do think that obviously, when we're talking, it's yet another thing, yet another imposition. I mean, I look at our friends in Shaker, I would imagine this is going to, there's a lot of country club Republicans who are gonna really plots when they see that, if they understand what plots means. But, I think it's gonna really, there's some significant sections of our community where we have home valuations of over a quarter of a million, 200,000 to 250, that this is going to really negatively impact.
Correct.
That's true, but,
There's no end.
you're not right. I mean, I guess we could trend this out and try to track this and see what the real impact is. But I think people are still, at a certain level, they're still gonna make their decisions about the properties that they were willing to invest in or sell or move to another community or whatever. I don't know that we have any control over.
No, what I just wanted to get clarity from Mr. Gaynor in a public component, a public venue, to articulate that when we talk about vouchers, we talk about House Bill 920, this is yet another component where a legislative body above us is changing policies and procedures, which will have a negative impact with us, and we have, no recourse.
Yeah, well, Scott, I would ask, do we know the number of units in our district that would be impacted like
No,
that?
we don't, and that's.
Is there,
that's
can we
the
get
thing
that,
We would be asking.
can we get that information?
We've made the request, yes.
We have?
Yes. So the county, we've asked the county, we don't typically get that data to that level of detail,
Mhm.
but we have made the request, the county can provide us a listing, and I'm sure probably every district has made the same
Okay.
request. So once we have that, we'll share it, and I'll be certain to send it to you, Eric,
I
too,
appreciate
just
it.
on the side, absolutely.
I like data, that's why I was.
I know.
Yes. That was my only question for under finances.
Okay, anything else? All right, so we are ready for superintendent's report.
Approval of the school calendars.
Okay, well, the motion on the floor here would be to approve the school calendars. The Ohio Revised Code said that we'd have at least 30 days. We have had it up on our website, and we had some comments. So it would be to approve the proposals for 18, 19, 19, 20 calendars.
Can you summarize the comments, or were they trending in any particular way?
You had 5 comments. One comment had to do with there was a typo on where we put Thanksgiving, so we appreciate that, so we changed that. And the other comments, one was very pleased. I know the comments were sent, and I'm trying to remember all the comments. One talked about starting school a little bit later.
That's
I can't-
always
Yeah.
a comment to that effect, I think.
But they're, for over 30 days it was up, and we had 5 comments total.
Okay. All right, I'll accept a motion to approve the calendars.
So,
Second.
Any further conversation?
I think from the perspective of the calendars committee, I sat on the committee, I mean, it seems like it's a good calendar, everybody is in agreement with it, the goal was to try to get this out by the end of the year. I think staff's done an excellent job doing it. It's a good job.
Anything else? Mr. Gaynor?
Mr. Register?
Yes.
Mr. Posh?
Yes.
Mr. Zucker?
Yes.
Mr. Silverman?
Abstain.
Ms. Wright?
Yes.
Okay, so we're at a board president's report, and come January, we'll have a different board president. I thought we might allow some time for the retiring board members to make comments. So, Mr. Silverman, you got any comments?
No?
Well, I have a lot, but that's not unusual. Sit back.
Do you want me to go?
No, it doesn't matter. It's up to you. I'm happy.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so thank you, Mr. Register. I really appreciate it. I have to admit, I've been waxing nostalgic for a little while here, and I'm a little bit of a mess, so I apologize if I'm a little obtuse tonight. But at some point, and we had a chance, for those who weren't there, a chance to talk to people and to send our thank yous out to people. But I guess I was still a little worried that maybe I hadn't done enough of that. So I had written up a couple of things. I had gone through some old things that from the past and all. And I guess I wanted to start with just a moment with, at least from my perspective, why any of us, and I mean any of us, people in the audience, all the staff, community, why any of us do this. And what came to me in one part was, one of the things we do on the school board is we elect the library board trustees. And every year I ask, what is it that you feel is your, is the greatest community asset that you can leverage, and what's the biggest challenge that you're gonna have to face? And most, if not all, say diversity. And I always find that to be a fascinating. It's probably a low-hanging fruit answer to some degree if you really think about it, but from my standpoint, I think some people, when I listen to the way they explain it, they don't explain it, they don't think in terms of our students. And so if I go back to the reason that I personally got involved in this, was really about the kids and really about what is it that we can do to make the best life for the kids. So let me start with a story, because I always start with a story, and some of you have heard this story before, and it's a cute story. I always have to say, because my dad's absolute favorite story, and 10 years ago when he passed away, that he would laugh to that at the end of the day. There used to be a kindergarten teacher at Noble who was only in one room her entire career. She did her student teaching there, and then the job came up, she got that same room. Her name was Diane Billa. And she told this story about how she never made assumptions about what kids came knowing. So she would, at the beginning of the year, she'd tell them, here's where the toys are, here's where the play area is, here's where the PA system is, here's where all these different things are. So anyway, she tells a story about how she took the kids one day to at the time it's called the library, to the library in the building. She dropped them off, and she's walking back. She saw a little girl walking from her classroom, and she said to her, the rest of the class is in the library, you go ahead. And she said, okay. And she said, is there anyone else in the classroom? And she said, well, Johnny's in the classroom. So she said, okay, no problem. I'll go up to the office and call him and tell him to go. So she went to Miss Billa went to the office, and she gets on the PA, and she listens, and she can hear Johnny playing in the room. She goes, Johnny. And she hears that all the noise stops. And then, so she thinks, he didn't answer. So she says, Johnny, and because she isn't playing again, and then all the noise stops again. And so then one final time she goes, Johnny, and she hears this little timid voice say, yes, Wall. So the point. So from then on, she always said she always explained the PA system, this box, and what it does. It's a really cute story, but what it really, to me, always illustrates is you don't know where the kids who are coming to you come from. You don't know what they know. You don't know what they don't know. And I think it relates to the whole diversity discussion, in that many people want to just use diversity to describe the color of a person's skin. Or they want to use diversity to describe how much money they have in their household. Diversity, every single one of our students presents a different diversity, a different set of diversities, and we have an obligation to meet them at those diversities and do with their diversities, help them realize their full potential. And what I guess, everyone knows that's not easy, and it's not trivial, but as people were thanking us, the three of us tonight, and us as a board, I feel somewhat guilty because it isn't about us. It is about all of us. It is about every single member of the team. It is about everyone who's ever been involved. And I will single out a few people for me personally. My first superintendent was Deb Delisle. She is the one who saw some potential in me that I never even saw. And she is the one who taught me to listen to students and not just hear them the way I see the world, hear them the way they speak the world. And I will never forget her for that. I'd like to thank this superintendent, Dr. Dixon, who took it upon herself. She is the reason why we have an equity policy. And for those people who have any issues with an equity policy, my reading of your point, and I don't want to speak for you, was that the whole point is that we need to empower our staff, our students, to know that these diversities are the most important things. This is what makes them who they are. And it behooves all of us to recognize that in them and to give them the maximal opportunity to do the best they can with it. Mr. Silverman, absolutely, all the years together, for you and I know each other well enough that we are very honest with each other. There's certain things that people who don't know you don't understand about you, but one thing that everyone who knows you understands is you love this school district like no one else, and thank you for that. Mr. Register, over all these years, has really become like a brother to me. He puts up with me at my worst Chicken Little imitation, and God, I'm so sorry, Ron. But he takes my calls, has always taken my calls, always listens to me, and recognizes the diversities that I have, and I can't thank you enough. And then the one who's actually been my younger brother, you're my older brother, my younger brother, Mr. Gaynor, who honestly is in many respects an unsung hero of this district. Because he's in that boring section called finance. Nobody really cares about that except they don't want to be paying more money. But this is the man who keeps all the drama that is a school district at an even keel and has an answer for when I call and say, oh my God, the world is about to end, and he'll, laugh at me and whatever. But Scott, I can't thank you enough. So I have to say those things. But then it did feel like I did pull something out of an old speech that I did many years ago to the staff, and I really do feel this. I do feel this is about the entire team. And while we board members have our own jobs, and maybe I do some set of small, varyingly useful things each day, I'm actually jealous of you people who work in the school district because you get to enhance children's lives each day. So I wanted to specifically say, thank you for being the person who provides them the opportunity to learn by driving them to and from school. Thank you for being the person who finds organizations who are willing to help fund success for them. Thank you for being the person who ensures their learning environment stays safe and clean and in working order. Thank you for being the person who designs and administers the programs that address their needs. Thank you for being the person who diligently monitors the disbursement of funds to maximize efficiency in the programs we offer them. Thank you for being the person who helps build community support for them by spreading the word. Thank you for being the person who pores over data to ensure we're doing the best we can for every child. Thank you for being the person who maintains the areas where they exercise their bodies as well as their minds. Thank you for being the person who makes sure their bodies and minds stay exercised. Thank you for being the person who makes sure both sides of their minds stay exercised. Thank you for being the person who patches their bruises, tests their eyes and ears to ensure they're ready to learn. Thank you for being the person who keeps the offices running smoothly so their needs can be met. Thank you for being the person who feeds them resources from classic text to 21st century technology. Thank you for being the person who enriches their lives with knowledge and skills and experiences and ideas. Thank you for being the person who stays with them and listens to them when the person they need most is a friend. And thank you for being the person who leads the team, who tells our stories, who shoulders the burdens and rallies support so that the rest of the team can do what they each do best. And then finally, I need to thank one other set of things. For those of you who are out there, I mentioned that I am just a PTA mom with a beard. Nothing more. I got on this board hoping that I could in some way positively impact children's lives, that I could be doing something for them. And then I realized that I had it wrong. because they do so much more for me than I ever could have done for them. So I guess the last set of people I want to thank is I want to say thank you to every student I ever have known in this CHUH district. Thank you for enriching us. Thank you for motivating us. Thank you for energizing us. And thank you for inspiring us. And thank you one and all. This has been an honor to serve you.
So I guess that's.
That's all I got.
I guess that's the president's report.
No.
The Cal is really a fascinating character for me. So I'm gonna look at this DVD. I guess I'll get a DVD and look at this over and over again. And I always had in my mind that I wish I could put it together and speak like Cal. But unfortunately, we all don't have the same gifts. But I would say that after 16 years, it's probably appropriate for me to say something. So I don't look for a Cal speech. But I guess I've reflected, and I have regrets. I just feel like I never did enough. And even today, leaving, to me, I feel like I'm just now discovering what it means to be a real school board member. Like the issue in dealing with state policy and everything, I think that's the frontier that school board members should be on. And when I go to capital conferences and have an opportunity to speak to other school board members, I'd say we devalue ourselves. That we, even in situations where we might go to a gathering and they introduce elected officials, and school board members are often not mentioned or not recognized and so forth, which makes absolutely no sense. We represent the same constituencies that the people in the state legislature represent. And so it's time for us to begin to see how we work together and really have an impact on state policy. And I think we haven't paid enough attention to that. So now I'm just getting to the point that I realize that's what we should have been doing all the time, that I could have been working with other school board members, and Cal and Eric and Beverly and Jim could have, done this stuff. But I just, in the last 2 or 3 years, I recognize that. And so I always tell myself as I leave, I wish I had done more. And I'll tell you, I always wish that I'd done more, that I could have done more. But it's fascinating to me that everybody thinks I did a whole lot. I mean, it just absolutely fascinates me. And I had to learn within the context of the last few months to say thank you, because I just never feel like that's enough. And I think that each of us as individuals, as faculty, students, board members, staff, I just think we need to challenge ourselves, because I think when we think we are recognized and people should recognize us, we should say, there's probably something else that I could do and should do. So as I walk off the board, my thinking is, wow, those things that I wasn't able to do, how can I get them done? And I know I don't want to end up at every board meeting interfering with the school board or the staff or whatever, but I do think there are ways in which things could be energized, and I think that I'm happy that I served on the board. I think that I learned a lot, but again, I don't ever think that I did enough to deserve the praise that you've given me, but I do thank you for electing me and having some confidence in me and believing that I really accomplished some of the things that you wanted. Now, I think I'll go accomplish some of the things that I want related to education. I mean, education is a huge, huge thing, and we say that sometimes, but I don't know that we realize how important it is, and I think every child that comes out of this district ought to see themselves and say to themselves that, boy, there's one more thing that I can do, and while I'm here, let me do it. So anyway, that's the way I would say it. And again, I thank you, and I might try to work on my speech like Cal, so that next time I speak, I'll be able to speak like Cal. Anyway, I appreciate everybody that I can see, hear, talk to, and I will be around, and I hope that there's something that you can see that I can really do and maybe help you out somewhere. So anyway, I'm available. So that's the board president's report. I hope we don't have any unfinished business, but I'm sure we do. Does anybody have any unfinished business? Does anybody have any new business? That can wait till January. Any correspondences and announcements? I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Gaynor?
Mr. Register,
Yes.
Mr. Posh,
Yes.
Mr. Zucker,
Yes.
Silverman,
Yes.
Ms. Ray.
Yes.